Another meeting, another stack of paperwork, and of course, another afternoon sitting across from Courtney while she gave me the daily and somehow weekly breakdown of everything happening around the office. Courtney knew everything, and when I say everything, I mean everything. We were going through schedules, projects, deadlines, and a few things that needed my attention when naturally she brought up the music master. So, when exactly are you planning to pencil him in? I looked up from the paperwork. Apparently, he had been holding on to a few tracks that he thought would work perfectly with the Arts in Motion project. Okay, cool. Put me on his schedule later this week. I'll sit down with him and we can go through the music and see what works. Courtney made a note and kept moving. One project, another name, another piece of paperwork, until suddenly she stopped. I noticed it immediately. There was a name sitting right there on the page, Tiffany, the fifth collaborator for Vibe. I looked at the information and then looked back at Courtney. She was acting different, almost reluctant. And if there was one thing I knew about Courtney, it was that she was rarely reluctant to tell me anything. So naturally, I asked, okay, Courtney, tell me about Tiffany. She hesitated. Well, I waited. I don't really know how to put this, Sonny. Now she really had my attention. What? She lowered her voice slightly. There's been some office chatter that Tiffany might be a witch. I stared at her, and then I laughed. A what? Courtney immediately started backtracking. Okay, not a witch. Courtney, you literally just said witch. I know, but that's not exactly what I mean. I leaned back in my chair because now I needed to hear this. She tried again. I guess the best way to describe Tiffany is she's very new age, very spiritual. She's just a really unique spirit. I stared at Courtney, trying to mentally process exactly what she was telling me. So, people think she can do things? Courtney tilted her head. I guess you could say that. That answer didn't help at all. She continued, she's strange, but not in a bad way. She's not mean or anything. Actually, from everything I've heard, she's really nice. There's just something about her. Something like what? Her energy. I raised an eyebrow. Her energy. Yeah, it's hard to explain. It's not bad energy. She's just different. Now I was officially interested. I looked back down at Tiffany's name. Okay, so where does she work? What department? Because I don't think I've ever even seen her before. Is she with the newsletter department? Courtney shook her head. No, actually, she does something kind of similar to you. That caught me off guard. Similar to me? She spends a lot of time at art galleries. She goes to exhibits all the time. I immediately shook my head. Well, then, I've definitely never seen her because I practically live in those galleries. Courtney interrupted me. No, Sonny, she paused. Tiffany goes to different kinds of galleries. I stopped flipping through the paperwork. Different how? Courtney looked at me for a moment, and suddenly that little office conversation didn't feel quite as funny anymore because something about the way she said different made me realize Tiffany wasn't simply another collaborator I hadn't met yet. There was an entire side of the art world she belonged to that I hadn't even stepped into, and apparently I was about to. At this point, Courtney definitely had my attention. Okay, elaborate. What do you mean by different exhibits? Courtney paused for a moment, almost like she was trying to carefully put her thoughts together before explaining it to me. Well, I guess, Sonny, they're the type of exhibits that are more centered around African spirituality, ancestors, spiritual practices. Some of them can get pretty heavy into occult themes or spirituality, things like that. I looked at her puzzled. That actually threw me back a little bit because I thought I knew just about every type of art exhibit throughout the city. Well, which exhibit is it? Courtney immediately pointed down at the paperwork. Here, it's right here. That's where it's located. I looked at the address. Oh, that explained it. I've never even ventured into that part of the city before. Courtney nodded. I'm pretty sure a lot of people haven't. There are a lot of spiritualists over there, spiritual shops, candles, occult stuff, that type of thing. I look back down at Tiffany's information, and honestly, instead of making me hesitant, it made me more curious. Well, I think I'm going to pay her a visit. Courtney looked at me. I mean, why not? I can introduce myself, get a feel for who she is, learn more about what she does, and maybe figure out how we could potentially collaborate. And with that, we moved on. Or at least I thought we did. We continued going through the rest of the work until we eventually came across several new pieces that had apparently been implemented by Mr. Anderson. That immediately caught my attention. I stopped. Wait, where did you get these? Courtney looked at me. These particular pieces, where did they come from? I thought Mr. Anderson was still on leave. I looked through them again. Is he coming back to the office? Because that was news to me. I hadn't received a message, no phone call, nothing. And I was pretty sure that if Mr. Anderson had made the decision to return, he would have let me know. Courtney didn't answer right away. Instead, she just sat there, quiet, and I could almost see her mind turning. There was something unsettled about her expression, something heavy. It was the same hesitation I had noticed earlier when we were talking about Tiffany, but this felt different. This felt personal. And immediately, I knew there was more to the story. Courtney, she looked at me. Is Mr. Anderson back? Did you talk to him? Because again, I haven't heard anything about him coming back yet, and I'm pretty sure he would have told me. Courtney got quiet again, and now my curiosity had completely taken over. I stared at her. There was almost an entire conversation happening between us without either one of us saying a word, because I knew Courtney and I knew that look. So I finally leaned in a little closer. Courtney, I paused. Tell me what's going on. Because at this point, one thing was obvious. She knew something. And for whatever reason, she wasn't sure she wanted to tell me. Courtney kind of sat with herself for a moment. She held whatever she was thinking for just a little while longer before finally letting some of it out. Well, he dropped them off. Well, not necessarily dropped them off. I kind of went past his place to get a couple of the stories. He'd been working on them and wanted me to come by and pick them up. I did some very quick mental processing in my head. Really? Because I remembered what Mr. Anderson's place looked like the last time I visited. So naturally, curiosity got the best of me. Well, Courtney, what did Mr. Anderson's place look like? Did he seem like he was in pretty good spirits? Yeah, I mean, everything looked pretty fine to me. Everything was in order. He looked pretty good. He didn't look like, she paused. I guess I can say he's getting better. He's definitely feeling a lot better. And this was one of those moments where I had to sit back for a second, because when I tell you a woman's intuition hit me like a ton of bricks, something wasn't adding up. There was definitely more going on here than Courtney was willing to spill, so I pushed the door open just a little bit more. Courtney, how much of Mr. Anderson's place did you actually see? She looked at me. And how long were you there, if you don't mind me asking? Silence. Courtney got really quiet. And honestly, that silence told me just about everything I needed to know. I looked at her again. Courtney, really? She already knew where I was going. You and Mr. Anderson? Her face immediately changed. He's a married man. Courtney became visibly flustered. She definitely had not expected me to pull the thought directly out of my head and throw it onto the table like that. It's not exactly what you think, she quickly said. I mean, it's not one of those things that's an ongoing thing. Now I was really surprised. Okay, so how long has this been going on? I mean, I don't necessarily know. And that answer told me even more, because now I'm sitting there thinking, okay, so this has apparently been happening for a while. And immediately my mind went back to the last time I saw Mr. Anderson. I remembered seeing this man in a broken state, fragile, his life seemingly in complete shambles. I remembered thinking he wanted to fight to bring his family back together. I remembered the picture of his beautiful wife, his beautiful daughter. And now I'm sitting here trying to process an entirely different version of the situation. And I needed to process it quickly because, quite frankly, I had a busy schedule. So let me understand this. The man I saw completely broken and fragile, so overwhelmed by what was happening in his life that he couldn't even bring himself to show up for work, somehow managed to invite his assistant over to his place. And now there's some kind of office affair happening. Okay, interesting. But I also didn't want to make Courtney feel any more uncomfortable than she already did. So I simply said, Courtney, you have to do what you feel is best for you. I'm not going to tell you what to do. She listened. I will say this, you don't want to put yourself in a situation where you end up getting hurt. He's still very much a married man. At least to my knowledge, he is. He has a wife and a beautiful daughter. So you just want to think about, Courtney interrupted me before I could finish. Listen, it's just fun. I stopped. It's nothing big for me. It's nothing more than two adults having a little bit of fun. There's nothing more to it than that. She seemed much more confident now. We do what we do. We have a good time. Nobody gets hurt. I don't have any additional expectations from the situation. I'm just trying to enjoy myself. That's really all I'm invested in it for. She shrugged. We have a good time. And pretty much that's what we do. And with that being said, I didn't pry any further. I respected how Courtney felt about the situation. She was an adult. Mr. Anderson was an adult. Whatever decisions they were making behind closed doors were ultimately theirs to make. But I'd be lying if I said I wasn't still a little perplexed, especially with Mr. Anderson, because since he'd been gone, he had called me occasionally. Just little conversations here and there, updates about how he was doing, how he was feeling, where his head was, and never, not once, in any of those conversations had he casually mentioned, "Oh, by the way, Sonny, I may be having an affair with my assistant." Nope. Somehow that little detail never came up. Just as we were wrapping up the meeting, I picked up another document and started flipping through the pages. At first, I wasn't really thinking much of it. I was just reviewing everything one last time. But then I noticed something. There were changes. Certain changes had been made to some of the projects that I had put out, changes that I definitely did not remember approving. I stopped flipping through the pages and looked over at Courtney. Courtney, whose idea was it to add some of these visuals to these projects? I never signed off on any of this. Courtney quickly took the paperwork from me and started flipping through it herself. She looked like she was trying to piece everything together. "Oh, well, it says right here that Katrina made some of these changes." Katrina? I literally sat there for a moment trying to process what she had just said. Katrina, to my understanding, Katrina worked in the newsletter department. She did not work on the YouTube side. And she especially did not work on any of the projects that I was responsible for. So now I'm sitting there confused, but at the same time, I'm trying very hard to control the fact that I am getting increasingly upset. Because now I'm thinking, so this woman has gone from making up a story during one of her conferences to somehow showing up at my hair salon, and now she has managed to manipulate herself into my work projects. At this point, this had completely gone too far. I kept flipping through the documents, and that's when I noticed she hadn't just made a few casual suggestions. Katrina had actually left critiques and directives for members of the team. That was it. I looked directly at Courtney. "Courtney, here's the instruction. Please tell all of the team members not to take any directives from Katrina regarding these projects. I will address this at the next meeting." Courtney immediately understood. "I'll let everyone know right away, Sonny. Not a problem." And I sat there thinking, Katrina the busy bee, because apparently Katrina had been very busy. And if I'm being honest, I could feel myself being pushed to a limit where a confrontation with her was becoming unavoidable. For her to jump from one department into another department and then go as far as critiquing my work and my projects was completely out of line. So now I'm sitting there wondering, how far does this have to go? What exactly needs to happen to push this woman back into her lane? Because apparently, according to Katrina, the videos needed a little more jazz, a little more spark. Apparently, I wasn't saying like and subscribe enough. Maybe the thumbnails needed to be better. And I'm sitting there looking at these thumbnails thinking, why are the words so gigantic? The letters looked like they were about to jump off the thumbnail and literally knock me off the screen. It made absolutely no sense to me. So I reiterated myself one more time. "Courtney, please pass the word on. Katrina is to make no decisions regarding my projects or the projects here. She has no say. Her department is strictly the newsletter department, and I will address this with her directly." Courtney immediately agreed, and with that, we resumed the meeting, but mentally, I was still sitting there trying to process everything that had happened. This had been one heck of a day. It felt like every time Courtney and I discussed one situation, another one landed directly on the table. There were so many different things happening that I couldn't even process everything at once anymore. I had to take it in small doses, little pieces at a time, because honestly, that entire meeting felt like taking one complete shot. You don't sip it, you just swallow it and wait for the burn.